So, Jean-Guy, welcome to the channel. Met cancer, metabolic, not genetic. Um,
Oh,
round,
thank you, Vincent.
round two. We did have some technical difficulties the last time we got together, but here we are, and everything seems to be working. Touch wood on my desk. Um,
That's good.
so
Yes.
please tell the audience your story.
Well, I want to again thank you, Vincent, for having me on, and I will tell my story here. So, my story really, like my transformational lifestyle changes, actually started in 2017, where I got very educated. I was blessed with an opportunity to travel across the country of Canada, working with veterans, which transcended to working with children and adults alike in the cannabinoid therapy space, working professionally with doctors and pharmacists and so forth, where I got educated on the abuse of medication. And I'm prescribed medication. I got educated on adverse drug reaction, which are people are dying from and these aren't even causations of death. If you're looking at it around the world, they're dying from the prescribed medication that they're put on, and the combinations of prescribed medication, where they get liver failures and kidney failures and metabolic type conditions. And so that education, I saw commonality. And that commonality at that time, my heaviest was 363 pounds. And without getting into all the particulars, I got into the point in my life where living the Western lifestyle, was on a multiple of medication to the point where I was on severe. This is all diagnosed. Everything I tell you is going to be diagnosed.
Yeah,
Severe sleep apnea. I had heart medication, cholesterol medication. I was on inhalers. I was on like sleeping pills because of the severe sleep apnea because you can't sleep with a mask. I had arthritis in my right knee, calcific tendonitis in my left hip. I had degenerative disc disease and narrowing of the spinal facet in the spine. So, and it was 363 pounds at my heaviest. I would fluctuate all the time in the 300s, 320,
wow.
340, 350. So that commonality got me to go, you hear the expression, going down the rabbit's hole. Well, I went so far down the rabbit's hole, I passed China, that I went past Jupiter, and I realized that I still have a galaxy of learning to do. And I'm eighth year into this now. So when I talk about my transformational lifestyle change, on June 3rd, 2019, I kicked into the gear after 2 years of research. Now, my background, I had 28 years in governance, and I have over 35 years in business that I did simultaneously. And in those years of governance, I ran institutions. I was in riots. I was a use of force instructor, but I was an investigator my last 14 years. So I like researching and I like finding out information. So that research led me to I lost on June 3rd, 2019. After those 2 years of research, I went into a fasting lifestyle. I call it at the time was fasting, fitness, flexibility, nutrient dense, whole food, plant based lifestyle. Well, in that lifestyle, between June 3rd of 2019 and an important date of February 8th, 2023, those time frame, I had lost 120 pounds 5 years ago, and I never put it back on. I got rid of the severe sleep apnea and devices. I got rid of the heart medication, the cholesterol medication. I got rid of the inhalers. I was becoming metabolically healthy, and I was getting rid of the comorbidities. And the term comorbidity, a lot of people got familiarized with it during COVID, right? Because a lot of the death related to COVID were due to comorbidities. People are unhealthy, obesity, not metabolically healthy, etc. Then that's one part of my life. And then February of 2022, I got hit hard, really hard with COVID. I'm not a vaccinated person. I put it out there, but I contracted COVID. And if you remember at the time, it was during the time of the lockdowns. Nobody can
Yep,
go
yep.
anywhere, and you could trace your steps exactly. So I was in my household. I had this project working. That was the only two places I was going back and forth to. And the place I was working at, there was only three individuals that were working in there, and the person's family. So back and forth. So we were working the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. By the Thursday, and in those 3 days, or those 4 days we were working, it was wintertime in Canada. It was February, and we were inside and outside all day. You're sweating, you're working in and out. I was my jacket was open. I started getting the sniffles and that. So my immune system was compromised. Typically, if you're hot and cold weather and that kind of stuff. And then on the Thursday evening, one of the business partners notified us and said, "Do not come in tomorrow." My wife, contracted COVID and she got it good. And then she got confirmed, basically diagnosed with COVID, right? So that person, his wife, it was at the time was a fully vaccinated person who contracted and transmitted COVID because that was Thursday. We did not go in on a Friday. Saturday, I basically got an axe in my forehead, and that's how it started for me. It was this axe feeling. They started from my teeth, my nose bridge into my skull. The radiating pain of it's like you remember the old uh, tires and the inner tubes,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
on a vehicle or even on a bike, when you overflate that and you can see it popping out and bursting. That's how it felt. It felt like there was an inner tube in my head just continuously inflating. That has not left me, other than I'll explain in a second, since February of 2022. So, and then February 2022, I got hit very hard by COVID. It lasted several months, but the worst of it obviously was in February into March. But it was by April, May that it started dissipating. That's how bad I got it, and the lingering effects of it. But that the head pressures were very damaging. March 2022, I go and get blood work. I've been extracted. Remember the 2017 experience, 2018, and led me to 2019, June 3rd, 2019, transformational lifestyle change. I have been extracting data, my data, personal data, all my medical data. And I'm not sure about the UK, but in Canada, we have like my chart, and everything you do medically goes online, and you can extract it. And I've been paying out of pocket. So for over 5 years now, well over 7 years, blood work, urine work, feces work, endoscopies, colonoscopies, biopsies. I've been extracting and studying myself. And that's what I started doing. How I got rid of the weight, how I got rid of the severe sleep apnea, the heart medication, cholesterol medication, the investigative mind. I started researching the causations. And that's how I started 8 years ago. I started researching what causes these things. Because unfortunately, in allopathic world, I'll call it government doctors, government medicine, they do not treat causation. They do not go after causation. They treat
Yeah.
the illness, which is a sentiment of the disease, right? So
Yeah.
all they treat is the illness, and with medication, medical procedures, that leads to mobility devices or early death, or dying longer. So when I started doing all that research, so March of 2022, when I went and got my blood work done, paid the extra $125, off the chart, Vincent. I mean, in hindsight, there was the pathologist note was clear on there to monitor and to review, to re-review, to readdress. But the two doctors that looked at it, it was during COVID. I'm just going to say that it was viewed as through the lenses of COVID, because they because I got COVID and I got it bad. They said all these biomarkers off the chart were due to COVID. That was
Right.
March 2022. By July, sorry, March 2022. By July 2022, golf ball size lymph nodes in my neck, golf ball size lymph nodes under my armpit. That you can see my doctors, even my doctor's own words. And when I went into his office, say, "Guy, the lymph nodes," he goes, "Yeah, I could see them from across the room. Everybody can see them." My daughter looked at me and said, "Poppy, you got to tell me what's wrong with you." My close friend of mine grabbed my ears and told me, "You got to tell me if there's something wrong with you." I didn't know what was wrong, maybe because it wasn't diagnosed yet, right? But these golf
Yeah.
balls
Yeah.
are appearing inside of me. So I went, obviously, to the doctor. They got ultrasounds. They found them to be fine. And basically, you lost so much weight, maybe they're more apparent now, et cetera, et cetera. But which wasn't the case. But the ultrasound cleared them, but only will monitor them for size. That was July. That head pain I told you about that went through February, March, April, May. By May and June, it started dissipating again. And then when the lymph nodes came out in July, the cracking, the splitting, it's a pain that wakes you up. It's a pain that you don't want to open your eyes open. It was for the long. I didn't even want to open my eyes. Literally, I didn't want to open my eyes. Sound, all that stuff was disturbing me. And I've never been a man that had headaches, who suffered from headaches in my lifetime. So it's almost a combination of it. And I've never vomited. And here's the interesting thing: since February 2022, the COVID, and the March 2022, the blood work now, I always had this sentiment of vomiting, but I never vomited ever. And then so July comes to lymph nodes. By the terminologies that were used were long COVID. right? Longo was used.
Yeah.
So come November of 2022, I bled out. I literally bled out. I won't get into the details, but I've been getting colonoscopies every 5 years since the age of 40. My mother had ALS in her last years of life, last 7 years of life, and in that period, she had a bowel cancer, and it got removed during the ALS. Very, very complicated, but she survived that surgery, but she perished of ALS. Um, so then the that's why I was getting colonoscopies every 5 years. So I at that time I at 55 I had a colonoscopy, and then I had a when they bled out, I had already had a colonoscopy 14 months prior. Right, so they didn't want to give me and biopsies and all that, and it was clear zero. So, and this is very important also before I get into that colonoscopy part. Up until February of 2022, when I got COVID, biopsies, endoscopies, colonoscopies, blood work, urine work, feces work, extracted data, zero cancer. I've never been diagnosed, never had any signs of cancer. February 2022, March 2022, blood work off the chart. It's COVID related. July 2020, 2022, the lymph node. November 2022, I bled out. I got a third colonoscopy. Uh, and then because my doctor got me in there, they called me in January 2023. We have an opening. Do you want to take it? Get to the hospital. So
Yeah.
I go get that. So that colonoscopy in January 2023, I got the call in February 8th, on February 8th of 2023. I was in Mexico with my family on travel. And the call was from the endo. There's a gastroenterologist. The gastroenterologist called me for to perform the colonoscopy and said we found CLL in the biopsy of your colonoscopy. They were surprised they found CLL in
CLL.
the biopsy of my colonoscopy, which is
CLL, what's
chronic
that?
lymphocytic leukemia.
Ah,
Yeah,
right,
chronic
yeah.
lymphocytic leukemia, which is a blood cancer, right? A leukemia type blood cancer. So that was so then, and I'm going to flash forward a bit because so I got that call February 2023. They were surprised they found it there. My doctor himself said they were surprised they found it there. They think it might be something more related to lymph nodes. We're surprised they found them. Even and I did a series of tests, which include another endoscopy because I used to do endoscopies all the time because of the acid reflux, which I got rid of too. All lived in a Western lifestyle. So they did the endoscopy. So that medical professional even said, I'm surprised they found it there too in your biopsy of your colonoscopy. I educated them all because I've been researching for 8 years. And then when I found out about the CLL, and I already had a lot of knowledge on cancer because of all the research. And when I say research, I have been listening to medical everything for like 8 years straight. And I sit in on oncologists on oncologists. I sit in, I'm in genetics world and I do genetics professionally. So I'm constantly listening to medical professionals from the audiobooks to the medical professionals to the CMEs to the courses. I've done courses. So I was very educated. And then one podcast was on oncologists in the US. I found out that they commonly find CLL type cancers in the biopsies of colonoscopies. So I educated them in Canada. And going back to my background of investigator, and that's in law enforcement, that they don't share information, right? Same thing, they don't
Yeah.
share information. Your doctors, government side, your integrative holistic precision lifestyle medicine side, on the private side, there's a lot of not sharing of information. So I in that go forward, the when I did all those tests and that, so based on that blood work, and now remember that blood work was March of 2022. Now we're in 2023. I
Yeah.
got that
Yeah.
call. They found CLL. All these tests they sent me for all these MRIs, etc. Inside my body was lit up with lymph nodes. So my fuel stations throughout my body were all enlarged. So beyond the lymph nodes and etc. I had it inside my body. So I was diagnosed with a high risk mutation of chronic lymphocytic leukemia, stage 4, right off the hop. So it's called 3-4. So the way it works is if you look at the chart, it's 0-1, 1-2, 2-3, 3-4. I got diagnosed with the highest form of high risk mutation, chronic lymphocytic leukemia. Then you got your HGHV, your P7 deletion, your TP53s, HQ, 11Q, 13Q, all those little indicators. Basically, my zombie cells, somebody had close the switch, the gate was open, my zombie cells were running rapidly throughout my body. So much so that they put me on a so people talk about radiation chemotherapy. I was advised that the type of cancer that I had, that the radiation chemotherapy would have been inefficient. It would have just toxified me, basically. So they
Right.
put me on a new medication that was approved in Canada, and a third or fourth generation of the nibs, which was called Brukinza zanubrutinib. It's 4 capsules a day, 2 in the morning, 2 in the evening, 12 hours apart. It's a toxic medication. They give you a very thorough understanding before you get on the medication. The pharmacist calls you. You're supposed to wear gloves. You can't even touch it with your hands, all that stuff. And the words of the pharmacist when they call me, your oncologist team wants you on this medication as soon as possible. So that's how it started. Here's some interesting data, Vincent. And again, everything I tell you, it's all recorded, all documented. February 8th, 2023, when I got that call and they found the CLL, I already had 5 years plus of knowledge in my brain, including cancer knowledge, including metabolic health knowledge. I got rid of all these things medically, the weight, all that stuff I told you about. On that date, was the last day that I had a drink of alcohol, and was the last day that I consumed anything processed. So when I lost all this weight, the medical conditions, the medication, the sleep apnea, all that, I was still drinking alcohol, and I was still having restaurant desserts. For example, if I wanted ice cream or chips, I had them as a dessert. It was a process that I did. I understood. I understood how to live a metabolically healthy lifestyle in processes, which I teach. Going forward after February 8th, I have zero alcohol, zero processed food. Now I tell people I define processed food because I eat only pepperoni and cheese, for example, or not only, but for the most part, I only eat pepperoni and cheese based on data and science. But that's a processed consumption. I eat sheep's milk yogurt, but that's a processed consumption. You got to buy it in a container. Like bottled water is a processed consumption. But when I'm talking, I've cut out all processed refined. I'm talking about the toxicities that are sold as food, but they do not meet the definition of food.
Yep.
The definition of food, that's how I consume. I'm February 8th going forward, zero alcohol, zero everything. And I only consume on a definition of food that it repairs, restores, and nourishes the vitals of your organs and mind and that. Remember the lymph nodes?
Yep.
I
Yep.
did not start the medication until May 8th, 2023. Between February 8th, 2023 and May 8th, 2023, the golf-sized lymph nodes in my neck disappeared. The ones under my armpit disappeared. May 8th, I started the Brukinza zanubrutinib. So it wasn't the cancer medication that made it disappear. It was the lifestyle changes. The augmentation, raising my bar, my healthometer, is what made those lymph nodes disappear. And just to talk about those lymph nodes, the March and May that I had that MRI around April, March of 2024, there was zero signs of any lymph nodes. Unremarkable. The term is used in the medical term is unremarkable. That's how lifestyle changed in combination with. And everything I did, and what I'm going to explain to you was based on data and research. Dr. Valter Longo study that I based myself on. Professor Thomas Seyfried, brilliant man, love that man. Never met him. I hope I meet him. But his studies are amongst many of them that I combine. I combine the both sides of the fence. The modern science, we'll call it, the government side, from your MRIs, your CT scans, and the
Yep.
blood work. I did all that, along with on this side of the fence, integrated holistic precision lifestyle medicine. I combined both. It's how I went from a stage 4 high risk mutation blood cancer. And if you look at the timelines, lucky if you have 3 to 5 years, right? Because in CLL, chronic lymphocytic leukemia, there's a watch and wait. So stage 1 to stage 4 down to 0. So some people are the 1 and 0, they could go 10 years and nothing happens to them. So they call them the watch and wait, right? And then people like myself, people are usually gone within 5 years, right? 3 years.
So,
If I and is a very interesting one study that it was actually a video presentation, the whole presentation, and it was on case studies. And it was on college on oncologists, and lo and behold, boom, they had a patient, but my exact same like blood work, the TP53, the P7 deletions, and all that, and that lifespan going on that was a 3-year lifespan. So I went with that, knowing that I did not run I did not want to run out of runway. I understood that. I had a lot of knowledge already, and I started from going forward. My sister died of cancer. My brother-in-law died of cancer. My best friend's father died of cancer. I've interviewed people, their husbands died of cancer, their brothers died of cancer. I can keep going on. And there's a pattern that people do. And with my knowledge, I understood what not to do and how to change forward. And
You did say
this
that
is what's
you did say
important
when
with me.
we last spoke that you did 40 days of fasting.
Yeah, I did 41 days. I did 986 hours and 32 minutes of fasting. I did it from
That's
October
precise.
31st. I started.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's because I, again, investigator guy. I documented everything, and the reason why I did the 41 days of fasting, I've never missed a day of fasting since June 3rd of 2019. I started with 16 eights back then. In my progression, my last 4 years, for example, I probably averaged an average of 20 hours a day. That's what I average every day. I've never missed a 16 hours. So, and so like if people, how do you do that? Well, it's a very easy formulation once you understand it and you live it as a lifestyle. But I've never missed 16 hours. That's my minimum. My average is 20 hours. There's a process how I break my fast. And then through that, I did 3 day fasts and 4 day fasts and 96-hour fasts. And a 3 day fast, this is all data and research. A 3 day fast resets your immune system. A 7 day fast reduces your chances of ever getting cancer by 70%. That's 70%. That's the Boston College Thomas Seyfried 155 peer reviews. The research is there. Beyond that, and there's not that many people that have done 40-day fast. And I say that because I researched it prior to doing it. And I always go in prepared. And beyond your Pythagoras and your Moses and that, there's not that many people on earth that do 40-day fast. But it kept coming to me, Vincent. I was in. I was. It kept coming to me. Like I went through some very, very dark periods in my life. The cranial pressures. Like I mean, and I'll talk about the. Remind me to talk about the apricot seeds. But I still suffer from them, but at a much reduced rate because I figured it out, something out of there. And then the cancer. Combine that. Combine your blood cancer. Combine the head pressure. Combine the medication you're on. The toxicities of the medication, the side effects, or a neutropenia, or another cancer, or a purple patch in your leg. There's a lot of things that side effects also makes you very tired. You combine all those things. You're not sleeping at night. You're woken up with axes in your forehead at 3 or 4 in the morning. You have the anemia biomarkers off the chart. It really drains you. And I did everything and anything not to disrupt my circadian rhythm. And that's some of the tools I teach people. Do not disrupt your circadian rhythm. I did everything not to sleep in the daytime. I did everything to sleep during the nocturnal hours. And I say that because everybody that I've interviewed and everybody that I know, I've seen it with my sister. They disrupt their circadian rhythm. They're sleeping in the day because it's hard not to. So when I was, my eyes were burning to sleep. I would get into a cold shower. I would go for a walk. I would get on a bike, weather permitting. I get on the bike and walk, weather permitting. And everything not to. Training, core strength, skeletal strength every day. And the reason the science is there, it suppresses diseases, it suppresses cancer. The more skeletal strength you have, and one of the leading causations of that are attached to people that die from cancer is sarcopenia. I seen it with my sister. She couldn't leave the bed the last 2 months of her life. I seen my friend's father. He was just bedridden because they start living on the couch. They start living on lazy boy. They start living in the bed. They start sleeping in the daytime. They're up at night. They're eating chips. They're completely off the chart on their diets or lifestyle. And medically, the oncologist will tell you, and I'm one of them, that I could eat anything and everything. They tell you to refrain from alcohol and they tell you to refrain from tobacco. But I was told that I could eat anything because there's not enough evidence relating any adverse effect basically between cancer and consumption, which is false. There are some massive thousands of studies out there. And one of the biggest one is a Brazilian study. And then anybody listening, if you Google Brazilian scientist researcher, linking ultra processed consumption, ultra processed food to 32 diseases, which goes from cancer, your mental health, your diabetes, down to early death. So much so that those scientists this is a so those scientists, the scientists, the head scientist coined the terminology ultra processed food about approximately 15 years ago. This past June released a statement prior to the February 2025 World Conference on Diabetes, Cancer, and Mental Health and that. And they basically stated in that research that ultra processed food should have the same warning labels as that of tobacco, and it should basically be illegal to market. And that's how bad ultra processed food is. And I don't want to spoil, but I'm going to tell the listeners, July 23rd of this year of 2024, I was told that I have zero signs of cancer in my blood. And in words of my oncologist, it's as good as it gets. So remember, I could prove that I had cancer in my blood from March of 2022. I got diagnosed approximately around April. We've gone through all these tests of 2023. And then I went on the Brukinsa toxic cancer medication on May 8th, 2023. And then July of 23rd, 2024 is when I was told I had zero signs of cancer. I did not run out of runway. I do not eat processed food or ultra processed foods or the toxicities that lead to all these diseases. I ensure three things in my lifetime every day. And I teach it to my clients when I sit with them genetically. One thing I want you to put in your capsule every day. If I take one capsule and put this every day, is sleep. You're going to ensure you get some sound sleep every night. And if your sleep gets disrupted, and you can still wake up. I want you to wake up early, 3, 4 days in a row. Get up at 5, 6 in the morning, stay up all day, and then go back to bed at night before 10 p.m. and reset that circadian rhythm of yours. Number two, ingredients. I want you to consume closest to the earth as possible, meaning less chemical possible, meaning as natural, as whole grain, as whole food as possible. And three, core skeletal strength. I'm not talking about shape and size. It has nothing to do with shape and size. It has to do with metabolic health. You'll hear the terminology, 45-year-old marathon runner vegan dies of a heart attack,
Yep.
right? And everybody say, oh, he was so fit. Look at their diets. They're vegans because they do not eat anything that was unalive, but they're eating processed everything, sugary everything. That's their main diets, right? Their
Yeah, yeah.
main consumption. Lifestyle wise, I do not eat that. People, the longest living on this earth, this is data and research. The longest, if I combine it all, you heard about the blue zones, you heard about everything, right? The blue zone was basically the map of the world, the blue marker, and they were marking on the world where people lived the longest. And if you look at the United States, it's a Seventh-day Adventist in Loma Linda, California. That campus, that university campus in Loma Linda, California, those Seventh-day Adventists, everybody around them, the multi-millions around them in California, all live 20 to 30 years less than they do. And they get diseases 20 to 30 years earlier than they do. Why is that?
Diet and lifestyle.
In that community, lifestyle. In that community, there was a major study that was done. And what they found was within that community, specific to them, within each category, there's a healthier category, right? And in that study, they found those that are pure plant-based, pure whole food, natural, as close to the other possible, are the longest living. Below that were the pescatarian plant-based. That's why I became a pescatarian plant-based. Below that is your white meat pescatarian plant-based, then white meat, red meat pescatarian plant-based. If you take those four, the top four are the ones natural. So the chickens they eat are natural from the earth. The ones that eat the bugs and the worms, etc. The meat that they eat are meats that come from the cattle or that are raised truly off the land and truly eating natural,
Yep.
and they don't double them in size 60 days before slaughter. Like the Western society, they double their cattle before slaughter. How do you do that? Well, with chemicals, right? So you're consuming
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
We as human beings, we are a reproduction of what we consume. Like if you look at genetically, what we are is what we consume. That's what forms us, right? So it makes absolute sense if you look at epigenetics, epigenome, which is consumption and exposure. Your cancer is caused by a lot of exposure. They talk about stress, one of the leading causations, right? Myself, I can prove that during COVID, and I was getting my oxygen tested, and here's a mistake that I did. I should have went and got oxygenated, not intubation, because they know that now during COVID, that was a wrong process. They were killing people. But oxygen, I should have got oxygen because my blood oxygen was in the 80s. And if you look through research, one of the causations that causes cancer is that the lack of the saturation of oxygen in the blood. And it's not unique to me. I've actually educated. I was writing to cancer societies and my oncologist and telling them about that, and I had some cancer societies saying to me, "Well, we don't believe it came from COVID." Well, I would send them case studies, and there's case studies in there, and I'm writing a book right now, and it's all in there. And in those case studies, it actually talks about how COVID activated blood cancers. The intracranial pressures, not is I call them intracranial, that's the terminology. I'll just call them cranial head pressures. So the cranial head pressures and the blood cancers came from COVID, and it's not unique to me. So that whole transition, the 41 days, was very, very interesting. And like I said, it kept coming to me. Literally, I was waking up and I told my wife I got to do 40 days, 40 nights, and I started researching. She, people that know me, if anybody's gonna do it, it's you. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah. Well,
like
it's like in the
I started
Bible, isn't it?
researching.
40 days and 40 nights.
I think our bloodline. It's in my bloodline. I'm a Bourguignon, de Bourgogne, which would be French, right?
Yeah, yeah.
If I look at my family, and genetically, it talks about doing a Mediterranean lifestyle. So genetically, I started. So that's when so I met this company in 2019. I use the same labs. I work with the same labs as the highest hospitals, the highest of institutions. And I met them in 2019. And then when I went back to them several years later, I had already lost all that weight, got rid of the medication, medical devices, everything, right? And then I said to them, I'm looking for four things: what people are susceptible to, what ingredients they should be consuming to avoid what they're susceptible to, which is your cancers and your diabetes and etc., heart conditions and that. I want to know the pharmacology, adverse drug reaction, the medication they should not be on, because one of the things I had learned when I was traveling across the country, that it's crazy, and it'd be the same thing in the UK, how many members of society are on medication on the average. Like 5 plus medication on the average. Children, the amount of medication they're on. The elderly, 15 plus medication they're on. The veterans, up to like 40, 50, 63 pills a day. It doesn't make, how does somebody get on 20, 30, 40, 50 pills a day? It doesn't make
Me,
sense.
me, me
And they're
dad,
on medication they
before he
should not
died,
be on
he was
combined
he
because
was
it
on
kills them.
10. Yeah,
There you
ridiculous.
go. And that's those are like, and that were opened my eyes. And the last thing was supplementation. The nutraceutical supplementation you should take. That said, I always tell my clients, nutrient density whole food as natural as possible first. You're gonna first need your one. But I know genetically, for example, vitamin A, my body does not absorb it properly. I know that genetically. I know genetically that I have to extract my omega-3s or the different sources because my body needs it from both sources, right? I know all these things. So those are the four things I was looking at. And then that's how I raised my bar, because what happened is that when I did that whole genetic, I did my entire family, and I work with clients this way. And because, remember, I told you within each category is a healthier category, and then genetically, same thing. I started narrowing down. So I was taking supplements for years based on data and research and science, but now I'm taking supplements that are based on data research at the highest level that are made for me specifically. So by doing that, I kept getting healthier, and that's how, to me, in combination with allopathic medicine, integrative holistic precision lifestyle, genetic medicine, is how I raised my bar and how I went. And I'm going to call it 2.5 years, because I, from the proof of having the cancer in my blood in March of 2022 to July 2023, being 24, being told that I had zero signs of cancer in my blood, as good as it gets. That 2.5 year, I wanted to beat that 3 year, 5 year runway, right? And before going into the cancer appointment on July 23rd, remember, I studied my own blood, I studied my own everything. I had told my wife, going before going in, told my daughters, I I knew that I was in remission. I knew that I was in remission. And going back to that 41 days, that helped me a lot. 40, once you start going past your 3 days, you're creating stem cells naturally. People pay for stem cell treatment. you start producing stem cells naturally. After the 3 days I mentioned, the 7 days I mentioned, then after the 7 days, you start getting into the let's just say the renovation of the restoration of your bones, your nervous systems, your muscles, your eyes, your brain. After the 30 days, you're getting into the pineal gland. And I want you to close it, like not close your eyes here, but close your eyes and imagine the darkest of auditorium or gymnasium, the biggest that you've ever been into your life. And it's so dark that you can't even see your own hands, but there's an arc flash in front of you. You can never approach it, but it's always there. Whatever direction you look in, it's always there. After my 30 days, I was having those conversations with my inner self. That arc flash was me inside. And I remember yelling. And when I wrote half the book after my 30 days, like my brain was so lit in the ketosis. During that 41 days, I was doing blood work and urine work every week, paid out of pocket for it. I had an open requisition. And I went to I was lit up like a Christmas tree in ketosis. Because Professor Seyfried, Thomas Seyfried, in one of his studies, and he talks about it openly, is that you bring your body up to the highest ketone possible and bring your body down to the lowest glucose glutamine possible. Well, I've been living this lifestyle already for all those years that I got rid of all the weight, the medication, the medical devices, etc. And I was metabolically sound. And then I thought to myself, how the hell do I do that? How do I bring my body up to the highest ketone to the lowest glucose glutamine possible? 40 days, 40 nights. It kept coming to me, waking up, you got to do 40 days, 40 nights. And then I found this one doctor on LinkedIn that actually did a 40 days, 40 nights, and he wrote on there because I never removed myself. I've talked to the True North Institute. I've talked to a lot of greats out there that help people. There's a lot. I don't want to slaughter the name, like Burgignon Institute out of Germany and Spain, and there's your True North. But there's a lot of great institutions out there that have hundreds of thousands of files combined that reverse cancers and diabetes and cardiovascular. People will themselves in dying and they come out walking. And but that's on that side of the fence that people have to pay out of pocket, which is wrong, right? And so the 40 days, 40 nights, I did it all myself. I never removed myself. I didn't go to a retreat. I was doing business every day. Day 38, my daughter wanted a poutine, which is the French fries and the gravy and all that stuff. She's eating it beside me in the truck, and people are telling me, "Aren't you hungry?" I I I was at peace, Vincent. I was not. It was. I had nothing to do with food. I went through some very spiritual moments that I mentioned. Very spiritual moments. It was a spiritual mission to start that brought me there. But I had some very spiritual moments inside that time. My limbs were frozen. Like you could have put spikes through my hands and feet. They were frozen, and I knew that because I researched. Again, not too many people did it, but the information that I found and I researched, I knew what to anticipate. My family was worried, my sisters were worried, that kind of stuff. And when I got COVID, they were crying. You should go to the hospital, and that kind of stuff. And then this stage here, I went for a haircut. I think it was almost 2 weeks prior to. I had lost 42 pounds in 41 days. So, and this is all documented. I lost 42 pounds in 41 days. And then when I started consuming, which I'll explain, I gained 5 pounds per day. So 25 pounds in 5 days. Crazy how it worked. And I went to the salon and I was doing things in business and people are seeing me go down. I went all the way down to 198 pounds. So imagine, I had started at 240, then I went down to 198. I lost those 42 pounds. My heaviest in life was 363, like I mentioned. So imagine the fluctuation,
Yeah.
how the body works, eh? Like if you look at it, and even at 198 pounds, and I tell this to human beings that are listening to understand, I still had body fat. And people kill themselves for body fat, right? Body fat. I still had body fat. I put pictures out there. If you go to my Instagrams and my everything, I put it all out there. Jean-Guy with a big gut, Jean-Guy with 198 pounds, Jean-Guy with the double biceps now and the abs, right? I put it all out there for people to understand that it's not about shape and size within common sense. It's about metabolic health. It's about internal health. And like I said, I was going to places and people would look at me. I was going down to 198 pounds. You remember that actor? I can't remember his name. Matthew McConaughey, I think, is one of them. There's a few other ones that lost a lot of weight in these roles. That was me, right? I started shrinking and all that stuff, and people were like telling me that they thought I was dying. I had people that were very worried for me. had those that thought I was going to give up on the 42 days, 41 days, and all kind of stuff. And I didn't, right? Obviously,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was so confident. I was so confident, Vincent, that I was in the 41 days that I publicly put it out there. And number two, on the apps and on the timer, I put a backward countdown timer. So on October 31st at 8:15 p.m., I started my countdown timer of December 11th at 8:15 p.m. And I was so at peace with the food that I could have broke my fast at 8:15 p.m. on December 11th. At that time, I went and took a shower. I got very comfortable, got the bathrobe on, set up the camera. My wife had made me a very nutrient dense from the garden vegetables and like organic foods and that kind of stuff and type food that I made. She grinded it all up in a blender for me, and all the everything was in there. And I on video, I started my first tablespoon. I was only able to after the 15th tablespoon, I put 20 in my mouth, but after the 15th, I was listening to. I'm very interconnected with my body, and that's all I ate. The first day, the second day, I did some avocado and the same soup. Third day, I introduced some like eggs and nuts and seeds, that kind of stuff, but very minimal quantities. It was on the fifth day that I went to a brotherhood thing, and then they surprised me, and there was tons of men there, and they took me out to dinner. We had a private room, and people were coming in and talking because I went through a religious experience, right, at the 41 days,
Yeah, yeah.
and I feasted that night. I had a Mediterranean feast, and that was my biggest meal. But the first 4 days, I hardly ate, like a call it like a bird. And then the meal was on the fifth day. But in those 5 days, how the human body works, I gained 25 pounds in 5 days, 5 pounds a day. That was part of my healing. I truly, you can see my blood work. You can see my blood work, my white blood counts, my lymphocytes, and all that. And when around that time period, how it just goes like this. You can see that how that helped, right? It's a combination of everything, though. And that's a Valter Longo study. Those that are most successful in beating cancer are those that combine the modern medication combination with. And and that's how I did it. The core strength
Walter
every day.
Longo,
There's
that's
days I
the Walter Longo, that's the fasting mimicking diet fella, isn't it?
Correct. He did a lot of research on longevity. He's a doctor. He's from Italy. He also teaches at Harvard, I believe, and all those things. But yeah, he came up with a fasting mimicking diet. A very brilliant man. He had wrote me back at Professor Seyfried wrote me back. There's a lot of brilliance that come out of Italy also. There's the Pecorino study cheese. The Pecorino study where it's a cheese that's sheep's milk cheese from the mountain where there's no pesticides, etc. It actually reduces your LDLs and your cancer rates. Just like the 7 day fast reduces your chance of ever getting cancer. So a lot of these studies are out there. Like within each category, there's a healthier category, and that's what I teach individuals. Right, like in nuts and seeds, there's higher nuts and seeds. Watermelons, like you know how they remove. I don't know if it's like the same thing in the UK. You get watermelon, there's no seeds in it,
Oh no, there's
right?
seeds
And I
in
tell
ours,
people, I
yeah.
go, there are seeds in yours.
Yeah, there are, yeah.
Oh, God bless him. See, in Canada and the US, you could hardly find any seeded watermelons. But I always want to buy the seeded watermelon because when you go to Mexico, you go to the islands, you travel. Remember, I mentioned to you that in my 20 years of travel with my wife, um, I rarely go to resorts. I think I did three of them.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
always go to we rent a house. We go to the local communities, local gyms, local grocery store, local everything. And I go to the farmers markets. I buy the fruit. Why? Because they're the real. They're grown organically, naturally with seeds. If you look at the nutritional profile of watermelon seeds, look at the nutritional profile of papayas, look at the nutritional profile of Concord grapes, of the seeds. Very healthy for you. Apricot seeds, and I said I went through some hard times. Like sometimes I get emotional. Right? Like these things I don't want to get emotional, but like you go through these dark periods in your mind, and it's so hard to live with. And then I had done some research, and one of them that it's always passed on, without getting into Flexner, Abraham Flexner report, and that they tend to erase things. I find or slander and tarnish what's truly healthy. There's I think statistically they say for every dollar spent on health, they spend $300 on unhealthiness. So you're against a machine of
Yep.
unhealthiness out there. The business model of unhealthiness out there, you're against that.
Yep.
And I had
Absolutely.
learned, I knew about the apricot seeds. They tie it to the cancers, those kind of things. And I had researched a lot of it, and then intracranial, the breathing, nasal breathing for oxygenating your brain. I understood that from the kickboxing and all that. So the research that I did, I said to myself, and with in Canada, for example, they're stern against the apricot seed because they say it's tied to cyanide. Well, there's a lot of seeds tied to cyanide, and if you understand adverse drug reaction, which we talked about a moment ago, it's all
Apple
about
seeds.
dosing.
Yeah.
So I started looking at dosing protocols for apricot seeds, and so it talks about 3 a day, 4 a day. So my size, I'm not a small guy. I went and bought pure, bitter, naturally grown apricot seeds. And on May 15th of this year, 2024, after like years, and just talking to you, I feel this pressure in that pressure in my skull. It's just it's permanent, but it's a lot less than what it used to be. And because of the apricot seed. So what happened on May 15th, I started a protocol of eating 6, 7 a day. I broke my fast. So I follow a very religious lifestyle, Vincent. I my 20-hour fasting, that's my standard. I only drink, like beside me, I have non-calorie liquids, green teas. I start every single day with water, pure water, a liter of it. Then my water has my creatine monohydrates in it, my electrolytes in it. And from that, I go to green teas and black coffee. So it's all non-calories, and I'll break my fast 20 hours into my day and 20 hours into my fast. So I break it around 2, 3 in the afternoon. But the first solids in my body is my supplementation. What is the intent of breaking the fast? So the first thing that my body absorbs is my supplements, followed by raw nuts and seeds based on data and research, the healthiest of raw nuts and seeds. At that, and then a very nutrient dense shake that I put in there. So I've been doing this for 4 years straight. And then I have my dinner at night, which I eat in sequences that I can get into. Like I teach people that how to eat in sequences to lower your glycemic load, naturally burn fat internally, your visceral fats and that without even trying. So going back to the apricot seeds, I started introducing breaking my fast with my supplements. So I started consuming apricot seeds on May 15th, chewing them in my teeth, swallowing them, then taking my supplements. 5 weeks into it, I was back here in Canada, and I was with my wife, and I was training in my gym downstairs, and I was doing the roller, and then at the back of the head and the spine and that, and I do this every day, and this heat, this needle type heat went from my brain down my spinal cord, right down to the tip of your tailbone, and it didn't hurt. It didn't hurt, but it was a radiating, tingling heat that left me. And after my workout, I told my wife, I explained to her what transpired. It didn't hurt. 48 hours later, Vincent, I'm telling you, remember I told you I couldn't even open my eyes when I'd wake up. I'd wake up at 5 in the morning, and this pain, um, 25 to 50% decrease since consuming apricot seeds religiously every day. I did 6 to 7 every day. I basically did a front load, like creatine, for example. I did that for 6 weeks. And ever since then, it's 3 to 4 days. And I say 3 or 4 because of different sizes. So say
Yeah. Yeah.
3 a day. I did the protocol. So I chew on 3 a day. Now my hip pressures are not gone. They're down by 25 to 50%. So it's a hell of a lot better than the way it used to be. And I'm going to figure it out how to get rid of it all. Last week I did a sardines. There's a doctor out there that talks about the sardine fasting. Well, it's not really fasting, but if you look at fasting mimicking, you can bring it down to 1,000 calories a day, for example. I did 4 days straight, 3,600 calories a day. This is an experiment I did. Sardines only. So I bought 24 cans of sardines, and they're wild caught in that. I opened the cans. I would put them into a strainer. I load the strainer. I thoroughly rinse it, get all the juices out of it, just because I want to use my own oils and that kind of stuff that I know of. So I strain it properly. Then I put it into a container. I added my olive oil, single source olive oil, extra virgin. I added my MCT oil. I added some lemon juice, and I added some hot sauce. Zero sugars. I'm gonna sell as organic. Shake it up, let it marinate, and I did this for 4 days. Vincent, broke my fast with it, and 2 days I just did it. It's called one meal a day. I just had it in a sitting period, like a dinner, just sardines. And then the other 2 days I would break my fast around 3, and I'd have more around 5. in a 4 hour period, maintaining 20 hours of fasting, 4 hour period, I dropped 9 pounds in 4 days while eating 3,600 calories a day. I didn't do it for that. I did it because of omega 3s. The fatty fishes, there's five of them. You got your salmon, you got your mackerel, you got your anchovies, you got your herrings and kippers, you have your sardines. Those five fishes are very high in omega 3 fatty acids. And people talk about the mercury. If you're concerned about the mercury, then stick to the herrings, stick to the salmon, stick to the kippers and that, right? So the mackerel. So stick to your non-mercury.
Some
But
of
the
some of
reason
the
I did
issues
that is because,
some of the issues with that
pardon
sort
me.
of some of the issues with that sort of fish here in the UK, it has it's in a brine, and the oil is seed oils. Go
That's
figure.
right. So that's why I rinse them thoroughly. And that's a
Yeah, yeah,
very, very, very important point you brought up. The seed oils were invented to lubricate war equipment. If you look at the seed oil manufacturers, they look like oil refineries, right? And
yeah,
it's because they were designed for lubricating military equipment, from your jets to your ships to your tanks to the whole nine yards. And then what do you do with all these refineries when the war is over? It turned it into food, like they do everything else, right? So
yeah.
that's why I tell people take it, put them into a container, strainer, rinse. When I say I rinse, like flood it, shake it, rinse thoroughly. Then I add my own, put it into a container with my own that I just mentioned. Well, I lost the 9 pounds in 4 days, but I didn't do it for that because I know how to. I don't look at fat loss, and I teach people. I will talk about fat loss because it follows, right? But I do not teach on fat loss. I teach on internal health, and the
Yeah.
internal health of that genetically always talks about omega 3s. Raising your omega 3s because it repairs and nourishes the brain while it also repairs the body and tissues. If you look at working out and training, it repairs. Omega 3s are very essential. It's like your proteins are essential. Your healthy fats, like your avocados, are essential. Your carbohydrates are not essential. The carbohydrates that are essential are meaning your plant based. You know what I mean? You
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
need your chips. You don't need your all that toxicities that are building diseases, right? So these things that I do, and it's part of a lifestyle. And people ask me, how did you beat cancer? It's processes, incremental habits. I want you to start. Remember those three things in the capsules: your sleep, your core strength, and your ingredients. The other thing is processes, right? I want you to be healthier tomorrow than you were today, and repeat. And I say this with clients, and I go through it with them. The more nutrient dense you consume, the less you will consume while becoming internally healthier. Meaning, the more you eat off the earth, the more you eat as natural, without chemicals, the more this phone, if I plug it in your phone, you plug it in when it's fully 100% charged, unplug it and leave it on the counter. What happens after a week?
It's dead.
The matter's depleted, right?
Yeah, yeah,
It's the same thing with nutrient density. Nutrient density, I could take your romaine lettuce, freshly picked, it's at 100% charge of nutrient density.
yeah,
When you go to your supermarket, if you go and look at the harvesting date sticker, the timer, the average is 2 weeks. You'll probably get it. By the time you eat, it's 3 weeks. Well, that battery is down to like 50, 75% less. That's what happens. The more nutrient dense you consume, the less you consume. I can take this container right here, and it's a liter container, and I can take an 8 ounce glass, and I can pour this into the 8 ounce glass. Although this is a liter, I can keep pouring it overflows. This 8 ounce glass will never absorb more than 8 ounces. Think of that as nutrient density. That's how your body works. The more nutrient dense, you satisfy your body. That's why you don't overeat. The more nutrient dense you consume, the less you will consume while becoming eternally healthier. It repairs the seeds I talked about a moment ago, the consumptions that I did, how I got rid of my lymph nodes, how I got rid of the heart medication, cholesterol medication. I went after inflammation. I went after glycemic load. I made sure that I did core strength. I made sure that I did maintain my circadian rhythm. I made sure those are all sequences. And that's what I explain to people. That's how I get calls all the time, Vincent. Last night I spent an hour with a lady on the phone who's got breast cancer stage 2. She's got a couple of growth in her neck and in the back of her head. They're saying it's they're they're non-cancerous right now. But I'm constantly getting phone calls. I'm constantly with individuals, and I sit with individuals professionally on the genetics. I do their full genetics with them, and then I teach them the understanding. I can give you the report. Here's so much money. Here's the report. What do you do with it? I've
Yeah,
had
yeah,
clients that went to some very famous genetics institutions, and then they paid their big dollars, and then they came to me and they did it through me because I sit with them first, and the first thing I teach is the understanding. When you understand something, that's how you, the most successful business people, the most successful at anything do, once you understand it, right? So the understanding is very important. So when I do the genetics and I sit with somebody 2, 3, 4 hours, I've had clients that, and that it is what it is. If it takes you 4 hours to understand it and to absorb it, and then it follows through with them. I've had people lose 50 pounds at 100 pounds, and I don't talk about fat loss. I have people that want to live, and people tell me I'm disciplined, Vincent. And I say to them, I go, it was death. It was death or mobility devices or dying longer or debilitating conditions. It's not a choice. I did not want to be there, right? You go to old age homes. Some of these people are in their 60s, right? You're a winner from birth. And I say this to you, Vincent, and I've said this to you before, and I say this to every client I sit with, and I say to everybody that's listening to understand, you are a winner from birth. The astronomical odds of you ever being born are
yeah,
in the hundreds of millions, right?
yeah.
And some studies will tell you in the billions. It takes over 4,000 people genetically to form you. So the astronomical odds of you ever being born makes you a winner from birth. You owe it to your life. And if you're a parent, you owe it to your parent duties. And if you're a grandparent, you owe it to grandparent duties. People with that have children, they tell you that you have one chance to raise your children. No, you don't. You had a chance when they were born. You have a chance when they're in elementary school, chance when they're in high school, chance when they're in college, university, chance when they buy a house, chance when they get married, chance when they have children. They need you when they have children. They need you as a grandparent. It's rewarding to you as a grandparent, they need you. So you owe it to your life. And this is where that discipline comes from. And this is what I explain to people. Like it's it's not a choice intrinsically. When I was at 363 pounds and full of medication and all these complications, I looked at myself in the mirror one day and I said to myself in French, "Où s'en va? Where are you going? Look at my old pictures. I was a use of force instructor, hand-to-hand combat instructor. I've chemicalized, and I've been in riots. I've chemicalized thousands of officers, right? I used to be ripped and fit. I used to run marathons. I had the abs in my 20s and 30s and that. And then, but I was living a Western lifestyle, and then it caught up in my 40s with all these corporations and all the government stuff. And if you look at my youth with double biceps and the abs, I know today that I was not internally healthy. I was building diseases.
Yeah.
And then it caught up to me like Kurt Plunk, you pulled that one needle and 6 marbles fall.
Yeah,
That's what
yeah.
happened to me. And that's where all these complications started until one day I became honest with myself because we don't see yourself because we're amongst the norm. Obesity is now a norm. It's marketed. There's a huge movement in Western society to make obesity a disease so they can get everybody on a medication that can go on a tax base,
Oh, yeah, it's a genetic
right?
disease, don't you know?
Well, and that's what they're
That's what
saying,
they'll tell you.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I work in
Like cancer's
genetics, and then when I
genetic.
work in civic clients, genetically it tells you to not eat these things. It actually tells you to stay away from your omega-6 saturated type oils, right? Your seed. It tells you to stay away from that. It tells you to eat this to avoid disease, right? But
Did you see
who
the
again?
video?
$300.
Did you see the
What's
video that I
that?
put out yesterday on the channel?
No, but I will.
I made a reaction video. There's a lady that interviewed Professor Seyfried and a doctor. I'm trying to think, Doctor Buns, who works at one of the top medical centers in the United States, and basically it was genetics versus metabolic disease, and I reacted to the video because this Dave Buns, I think his name was, anyway, whatever his Buns was his surname, and when Professor Seyfried was talking about he was talking about the nuclear transfer experiment, and and he just didn't get it. This Buns fella, he was so focused on what he knew. It was obvious that it had just, what Professor Seyfried said, just went over his head. It was just incredible to see.
I have a lot of respect for Professor Seyfried because he puts it right out there. Come and debate me. Let's read the science. Let's go through the peer reviews. He goes, they don't read it because they're not allowed, first and foremost. And B, we have doctors on your CNNs of the world that are telling people that it's a genetic thing, that it has nothing to do with consumption. They're literally telling you that all
Yeah,
these diseases and all these obesity has nothing to do with consumption. You know, they're on people's payrolls. There was a massive conference the last 2 weeks there in the United States that presented in Congress now, and from your Robert Kennedy Jr., who put all these individuals together, and including Dr. Casey Means, brilliant, right? And they put all the information out there. I know that information. Everybody on the right side of the fence, the integrative, holistic, precision lifestyle, genetic type medicine, know the truth,
yeah,
but you're against this monster that are controlling the reins of the tax base, and they make trillions off medication. Then they get these civil liabilities and criminal liabilities, and they give you back a penny on a dollar that they took from the tax base. Right? It's
yeah,
like,
yeah,
they're competing against that. So yes, they want you to overconsume. Yes, they want you. It's taxation and fees. It's medical procedures. It's mobility devices. It's medication. They want you on medication from birth. We have diseases that never existed pre to the 1980s. We have an epidemic of everything, right? But again, they're going to erase that. They they're doing everything and anything to erase that knowledge, and addict everyone. If you pay attention to the world, and I say this to people, tell me you haven't noticed the mental health issues around the world. And they know from autopsies that they're finding microplastics in brains, in penises, it's in breast milk, right? Microplastics, they know, releases estrogen. We have an imbalance. I have more testosterone in my body than the average 20-year-old today because of consumptions, because of the microplastics, because of the estrogen releasing not toxicity that they're consuming, right?
yeah,
That creates all these imbalances. Genetically, testosterone are equally as important for a man as it is for a woman for multiple things, including mental health. Right? When you start looking at neurotransmitters, etc., and there's a part of me that says they want people numb. Like this mind, I've made some mistakes in my life. I'm telling you, and I've been in business for a long time, and the mistakes that I made then, this mind would not do it. The way I think today, I call it a 2.0 version. I want you to think of your brightest, most influential, most impactful moments of your life. Imagine a 2.0 version of that. That's what starts happening. And the other thing that starts happening, and again, I'm speaking professionally on the genetic side, is you go back to your original taste buds. I had the opportunity to sit with food scientists in my life. And I know for a fact that they engineer food for the over addiction, for the profit sharing, for the shareholders, right? That's why it's designed that way. So the overeating, who benefits from the overeating? If they truly cared about healthcare, if it was such a cost in the system, then why don't you just you can erase all that? You would have a healthier society. The data is all there. Everything I talk about, I tell that to people all the time. It's all there. Public, private, governed data. We pay for tax base. The information's all there. You get a healthier society. You get a healthier workplace. You have more productivism. You have less absenteeism. You have better family. You have better sex drive. You have less emotional imbalance. I can keep going on,
yeah, yeah,
right? It's all there. The tax base would drop. The hospitals would be for the predisposed and the misfortunate, not for the person that I sit with individuals that tell me they eat a bag of Doritos a day. And I say, it's not you. It's designed for you to eat
Well,
a
yeah, you
bag.
only have to look at the advert on the TV for the Pringles. Once you pop, you can't stop. And you know, these tubes of Pringles, people getting their hands stuck in the bottom. You know, I mean, it's and I've got to
And
say,
there's
when
zero
I've
potatoes.
Yeah, and I've eaten the things, and I know where they're coming from, because they are addictive. They taste so good, and Professor Seyfried does talk about that sort of stuff. Jelly filled donuts. He talks about it being so good, and it is, and that's the sugar addiction that so many people have
But once you
that
but once you
following
stop eating
the.
that, but
Say
once you
again, sir.
stop eating that, once I,
Oh yeah,
when
yeah,
you go back to density and you stop eating that, you start tasting the plastics in food. That's what I explain to people. That's what happened to me when I stopped eating that once you pop, you can't stop mentality, because it's designed, it's engineered for your taste buds, your genes, your fat saturating gene. It's designed for you to not stop eating it. That's what it's designed for.
yep,
But when you start going to the 16/8, remember I started 16/8, 3 meals a day. I was eating processed. But what started happening, the more I started introducing natural food, the less I ate. So my 3 meals a day became 2 meals a day, became 1.5 meals a day. I've never been hangry in over 5 years. I have literally not been hangry in over 5 years. I, I'm vibrant, and I've never felt deprived. I've never felt deprived. I tell it to people. Like I live a very good life, food wise, and that kind of stuff. And I cannot. It'd be like eating this phone. I have no interest, because I started tasting the toxicities. I started tasting the unhealthiness. I remember the first year, my wife would buy me these keto this and keto, and I'm not against keto. Keto has it's in the 1800 medical books for Lamaze seizures now. There's just
yep,
some very good benefits to that. But what I'm talking about is the manufactured marketing products that they sell out there with the name keto on it, but it doesn't even meet the definition of keto. But they're sold, and she was buying me these things. I go, I can't eat that. And what happened is that my genetics started going back to my original state of birth, and I could start tasting the plastics and the toxicities. And at where I am today, I can go to functions. They could be everything on the table. I was at one last week, and people had all these things. I don't eat it. Like one of the gentlemen, because some people my wife made it, and I understand that. I respect that. And
yeah,
one of
yeah,
the terms my friend said to him, he goes, "Would you force somebody that doesn't eat pork to eat pork?" Same thing, right?
yeah.
So I live a whole food, plant-based, pescatarian lifestyle. And that's what I tell people. I only eat what's by definition, what's the definition of food? Well, if you ever look it up, the National Geographic has a really good definition of food. There's a lot of good definition of food out there, but once you start consuming based on the definition of food, and that's why I sit with my
I'm
clients
trying to
when
think
I
of
talk
the.
about things, I go, now let's revert to the definition of food. You
I'm
don't
trying
go
to think.
backwards.
I'm trying to think of the doctor now. There's one doctor that's on YouTube who talks about supermarkets, and he said you must stick to the outside. So all of the real food, and not eat the food like products that are in the middle, like he talked about Kellogg's Special K, and all of this. If it's in a box, it's no good, and it's absolutely right, isn't it?
And they are right. And what's you've heard these adages lately, like if a supermarket has a health food aisle, what's the rest? Right? So, but it's true. It's all chemicalized for over addiction, over consumption that leads to over taxation, revenue regeneration that leads to medication, medical devices, mobility devices. It's a business model of unhealthiness, and the only differentiators is that the ones that are holding the reins, if those reins went into these hands instead of those of true health, the right side of the fence, and it's in my book, all this stuff that I'm talking about, that taxpayers should have access to all forms of medical. I should not have to go to an allopathic doctor. I should have the choice as a taxpayer that I'm paying for healthcare, have a choice to go to a precision lifestyle, integrated lifestyle type medicine, right? Because I'm paying. Why should I have to pay double? Because
Yep,
we pay dearly in this country, dearly taxation wise for healthcare, right? But we could only go here.
yep,
But then
Yep.
there's all
Standard of
this
care.
side of the fence, correct, that reverses and treats causation. What I teach people is I'm not a doctor, but I work with doctors. I work genetically. I've proven the formulation based on investigation. I got over 8 years now. I'm into my 8th year of knowledge acquiring, and I've done the courses and that kind of stuff. But my point to that is, I know how to do it. But medically, right? Those that go to people that meet, they have to pay, right? They have to pay for the genetics, they have to pay for the understanding of that. Or if you want to go to a doctor in this field, you have to pay, but you already pay for healthcare.
Yep.
So why do I have to go through your door? It's like I want to get my driveway done, but you can only use that one company. Doesn't make sense, right? And it's the same thing. So, but you pay for it. So people that want to live a healthier lifestyle, that want to understand, and again, you're against a marketing machine. It should be taught from the onset of school, how to stay internally healthy, but it's not, because their business model is unhealthiness.
Yeah. Yeah. I just had a cough then, and I had to mute the microphone whilst I coughed.
No
Well,
problem.
Jean-Guy, it's been absolutely brilliant talking to you again.
Thank you, sir. Thank you,
We
Vincent. I really appreciate your time,
yeah, we
and I
didn't have
appreciate what you
any
do.
issues with the echoing in the background. It was terrible. I did try to to edit it out, but it was just a non-starter.
I'm looking forward to seeing this one. And I do want to share with Thomas Seyfried, Professor Seyfried, with this after, because and once that's out, then I want to send it to a few. I'm going to post it on all my social media. When you share with me after, I want to
Yeah,
make
yeah, for
sure
sure.
to put it out there, and I want to send to a few other groups and all that, because it's important because I'm getting reached out a lot, and I've had doctors and sidebars and surgeons and people and congratulating me what I did, but they want to know how I did it. All right.
Yeah,
And an
yeah,
interesting thing, a couple of years ago, I had these two doctor friends of mine who were like talking to me like that was during my 41 days now. They were talking to me like I should be traveling, I should be seeing the world, don't work so much and that, because on their side of the fence, I was probably a goner.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And so, and because that's all they know, like as it pertains to people, don't tend to beat what I did.
Yeah, can I recommend to you and people of the audience to watch the Stephen Bartlett is a an entrepreneur here in the UK. He was on a program called Dragon's Den, and he's now got a YouTube channel called Diary of a CEO, and he's managed to get some really popular and prominent people on his podcast, and as such a person, he's got 7.5 million followers. So the
Good job.
just like Joe Rogan and Lex Friedman and stuff. But he interviewed Professor Thomas Seyfried the other day. I watched it yesterday morning, and it's a great interview. It's really professional,
I asked you,
but it's great. It's just great to see Professor
I
Seyfried
saved that.
on a podcast that's got 7.5 million subscribers. So that is just awesome. He's getting out there. He really is getting out there. So
No, I know exactly what you're talking about, and
and
I saw
stories
that
like
clip of
yours,
that.
stories like yours,
Oh, thank you.
40 Day Fast, and um, it's going to change. It will. It's got to.
It has to.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
has to, and it's because of individuals you mentioned, like myself, or Professor Thomas Seyfried and Dr. Casey Means, the interview of the CEO, all those podcasts and individuals, your Joe Rogans of the world, like we can't be extinguished, because they've done, like, if you go back to the early 1900s when the Thomas Seyfried, I mean Abraham Flexner report. You look at those reports, they did everything to extinguish these worlds, right? And you're against a marketing machine of trying to extinguish, but they're trying to do it by controlling the media. That's the thing. It's a,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
they talk about free speech.
Good job,
This
Elon
is
bought
free
Twitter.
speech. Yeah, this is free speech. I
Absolutely.
really appreciate Vincent. Big, healthy, strong, loving hugs. I
Yep.
appreciate what you do. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to getting the final edited version. Thank you, sir.
Cheers. Thanks, Sean.